Welcome to False Flag, the podcast made to cut through the propaganda and doublespeak and empower a grassroots activism, and most importantly, to take back a government of and for the people.
I don't know. What's the end of tea leaves? Is there an end? Was that
find
the
him.
end?
He's missing.
Actually, what was real cool was, here's what was real cool, is that when all this started, and I heard about him, so I went and I looked him up online, and he was online, and he had his stuff online. I went in there, I was looking at his stuff, and I'm like, oh, cool, here he is. About 2 days after that, gone.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah. Everybody would be after him.
Oh yeah, this is when all those Russians started dropping all over the place, right? Like,
how many Russian ambassadors have they lost? Like 6 or 7.
These Russian just dropping like flies, and then he just goes away. So I think he's figured out it's pretty dangerous.
And with the FBI, it did get kicked into the BAU, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. And it was kind of a cross of X-Files because they were reading tea leaves.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us for False Flag. Today we're going to learn, all of us are literally going to go to school. You're not going to hear too much out of me because I'm going to be sitting back and listening to information on the Federal Reserve. Why don't you explain that to us?
Well, many years ago, I got onto them, and not everybody was. I was a real conspiracy theory nut because of what I thought about them, what I knew about them. And so whenever I would beginning to get into a conversation with someone about the economy or politics or government or something, I would play dumb, and I would ask them to explain to me what the Federal Reserve is, just to see who I was talking to. And without fail, I think at least 95% of people told me that, the Federal Reserve is that government agency that controls the interest rates in all the banks. So then I would know who I was talking to, and we could delete, just give up that conversation because I was talking to a wall.
When I was in college, business administration, they taught us that it was a very beneficial organization that kept the economy, kept the depressions lower and the runaway inflation lower. I mean, depression's higher and lower.
Recession,
yeah. It evened everything out.
So it turns out that no, they're not a federal agency. Have nothing to do with the federal government. They are private. A group of private bankers,
unaudited,
unaudited private bankers. Not all of whom are from this country. They're a group of international private bankers who control the monetary system in this country.
Well, in all the countries.
Well, our Federal Reserve only does it in this country. Other countries have central bankers.
But the people involved in the Federal Reserve are also tied into the international.
Oh yeah, they're all in the International Monetary Fund, World Bank. Yeah, they're all a bunch of all the international bankers are colluding.
Which goes back to a little bit.
But in the United States, the Federal Reserve System of this country, they just are in direct control of our monetary system, and every other country has their own central banks that do very similar things.
Well, why would people think that you were a conspiracy nut?
Because the truth
because no one knew about it?
The truth is that they are private bankers, and what do private bankers do? Oh, they're in business to make profit. They're not in business to run a country. And so the way they make profit is, the real short version is, they issue bonds that the Treasury
buys,
redeems in currency. If they issue $1 billion of bonds, then the Treasury can print $1 million of bills. Right? The problem is those bonds bear interest.
Bearer bonds.
Well, interest-bearing bonds.
No, not bearer bonds.
Okay.
They're interest. Bearer bonds is who have houses, but
I bear it.
But it's a regular bond. It's just a regular bond. They are instruments of debt. They bear interest. And so whenever the United States Treasury prints a note, that you buy a Coke with, it comes with debt. It comes built in with interest owed. And so essentially what we are doing is paying to borrow our own money. And it's not just that simple, but that's the basic principle.
So let me get this right.
It's debt. What do bankers do? They
So for
loan money for
American
interest.
Treasury to print money, first has to get a bond from the Federal Reserve. They
Right.
just can't.
Well,
Congress
actually, maybe it's
Congress doesn't give them authority to just go ahead and print money when you need it.
I think that's not exactly the way. Anyway, it's a Treasury bond. So the Treasury issues the bond on the Federal Reserve's promise
That it's backed.
to back the bond. They promise. There's a promissory note. They promise to back the bond. So the Treasury, in essence, issues a bond on the Federal Reserve's credit or whatever.
Let me say something real fast about see if I'm hiccuping. Let me say something really fast about the whole concept of a money supply. People realize, a couple of years ago they did a thing called quantitative easing, and that is just
Otherwise known as Big Bazooka Theory.
big bazooka theory. Yes. Okay. There's not a single dollar printed or issued digitally or physically in the United States that can't be spent. The whole thing about money is the only reason a dollar has value is we perceive it to have value.
Right.
There's nothing you can really trade it in on.
It says it right there.
Yeah, it's called a fiat currency.
It says something about. It says right. It's printed right on it. It's the faith and trust or whatever.
Of the United States
You know what I'm
government.
talking about? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because every dollar can be spent, if you suddenly put $1 trillion in quantitative easing into the economy, you've diluted the purchasing power of that entire lump of money by $1 trillion.
Right.
There's more money flowing around because each dollar is worth less and less and less. And one thing that
But see, the bond is worth less in theory. Okay, so let's say I'm the guy here. I'm the Fed or whatever. I'm the U.S. government, and I'm printing a bond worth $100,000, right? And I'm printing $100 bill at the same time. Now I'm giving you the $100 bill. You're sending me oil or whatever, okay? And you're like, what am I going to do with this $100 bill? Well, I tell you what, you give it back to me, and I give you this bond.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
This is what happens in the
they
world.
give you the present. You issue the present value of that bond.
But I have to give him $100 worth of bond.
No, it depends on how much the bond is.
No. If I'm selling this bond to you, now we're talking currency here.
Okay.
Now you're talking about buying the bond, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's different. Now you're talking about discounting this bond, right?
Money.
Okay, so that's different. I'm giving him $100 worth of bond. Okay, where in the hell was I going with this? Quantitative easing. Quantitative easing. Here's what I'm doing. Now I'm giving you $10,000. You're giving me $10,000. I'm giving you $10,000 worth of bond. But now I'm also taking $10,000 worth of bond here and $10,000 worth of money here, and I'm buying it from myself.
Right. And fractional reserve banking, because there's now currency involved and not bonds.
Right.
And currency, the banks get the money in a deposit, and they get to loan out
10%.
9 times the money.
Yeah.
And now what am I doing to the money that I owe you for your bond? And what am I doing? Okay, by doing this, I'm making it appear, because we already said it, the only thing holding this whole thing up is faith.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving you something where whenever you look at the numbers, it allows you to keep your faith.
Mm-hmm.
If this wasn't happening and the bonds were dropping in value, now this money starts having trouble. That's what's going on. That's what we're doing.
Well, and also like when that happens, gold spikes, and I have to explain to people over and over again. Gold is not going up in value. Gold still buys the same amount of goods and service goods and services did 100 years ago.
Right.
The amount of money it takes to buy that goods and services has went up that amount.
The price of
Right,
gold
right.
is a good indication of the value of
The currency.
Actually, the best thing to tell for the value of the currency is what you can buy with a silver dime at our level, right? Okay, now gold, dealing with gold, that's for these billionaires and stuff. Because
not necessarily. I mean, I'll take an ounce, 1 ounce of gold.
well, what I'm saying is, if I have $1 million and I want to go and make my gold, my wealth small enough where I can carry it or something, okay, I'm going to have to turn it into gold.
Right.
If I turn it into silver, I'm going to have too much silver.
Everyday currency, to buy a loaf of bread, you need silver.
Well, we used to have a silver dime, right? That's what we used to have. And the rule is that a silver dime is always worth a loaf of bread.
Right.
That's value-wise. So, and that's it. That's no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, the price of silver is going to spike. Well, then you're going to have the inflation of all this stuff. But this silver dime is always going to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to
and also how they manipulate the money supply. If you in an unregular or normal economic system, as the money devalues, interest rates go up to compensate for the loss of value. Because you can put the money in the bank, hold the value of your work. In high inflationary times, interest rates will also be high because it slows down the economy and you're raising inflation.
And
in
the
the
Federal Reserve did do that. They
in
did.
the 70s.
They did control the They did control the economy by setting.
Okay, but now even though we all know that our inflation is rampant, every time you fill up your tank or try to go to Walmart or whatever, interest rates are essentially negative right now. When you go borrow money at the bank, by the time you figure in the inflation rate and what you're paying in interest, it's zero. It's either zero or really, really close to it. Because it's the reason they manipulate it that way. Because if they had inflation, you think the debt's high now?
Yeah, if they inflate the debt, we're done.
We're done.
I can't pay it. And that brings us back to the Federal Reserve, because it takes a PhD to make this so complicated that normal people can't understand it. But anybody can understand that, in essence, what the Federal Reserve does is they loan the United States government money at interest.
why then, if the Federal Reserve is going to be the one backing the United States, why does it have international players in it and not American players only?
Because that's who set it up in the first place.
You can also play currencies against each other.
That's who set it up in the first. The Germans. There was a guy named Warburg who came over here when they set it up. His brother was, the head of the German bank, central bank over there. There's Paul and Max. I forget which one's which.
Max in Germany.
Yeah.
Paul here.
But he came over and helped set this thing up. And so the Germans are in it up to their eyeballs. So is England. And they're just all.
But the picture you're painting, the picture you're painting, though, shows that America cannot stand on its own without the Federal Reserve.
Whenever we try to do
so
that,
we're tied to these international people that control everything.
No, Andrew Jackson,
they control everything.
We went into Libya and Iraq. Not just for oil, but they were about to go off the dollar standard and go to euros.
But that's a different subject. That's the
petrodollar.
Well, Libya was
Gaddafi was actually going to start printing
the French control of Africa.
Yeah, the reason Gaddafi was killed had nothing to do with politics. It had to do with the fact that he was getting ready to
go off the dollar
and mint his own gold coins.
Same with Iraq. He was going off the dollar.
Yeah.
And the same with us. We have tried to go off to the international central bankers, we have a war.
Hold on. He wanted to go to euros. He was going to accept euros. Yeah. The euro crashed.
Oh yeah. Imagine that.
Right. Wow.
But these are international bankers. Way back 100 years ago, they were international bankers that took over our economy.
Now, how much of
no allegiance, no loyalty to this nation? They're international bankers. They could care less about this.
How many hundreds and thousands of years old are these families that are tied
thousands
in?
Anyway.
Hold on.
We were just talking about
from
that.
about the year 800.
Well, from Rome at least, and probably
No, that's
before that.
Yeah, Leo. Leo was what, 450 or something like that.
Yeah. It goes back to Rome, really. And then the Venetian merchants, and the Florentines, they were landlocked, but they had the caravan, they were merchants, they were bankers in Florence.
Well, how does this affect our daily lives, and how does it? No,
Hold on.
No. I don't want to even go there.
No, Mark.
What I want to know is, how does this affect the grassroots movements and revolutions that people are fighting for? Because all they have to do is, if they don't back it,
If a
they can kill
revolution
us.
doesn't get away from
And I don't mean
central
shoot
banking,
us, they can kill us financially.
Yeah. If a revolution doesn't get rid of the central banks, then it's same old business in 10 years.
Well, imagine the world's a checkerboard, and every country is a square on this checkerboard. Okay, these guys own every square but one. Let's say they own every square but one over there in the center. Did you know that by using the economics all around this one square, this one country, they can control what's going on inside this country?
Sure.
This country can have nothing to do with them, but it's going to affect their trade. It's going to affect the price of sugar, the price of tea, everything around.
And they have been in control for hundreds, if not thousands, of years.
So you talk about, well, what kind of country do you're going to if you have a revolution by yourself, you're going to accomplish nothing.
Right.
It's going to have to be a global revolution.
There's some writers. I was researching Columbus one time, and I found this writer talking about this very topic from the time of Columbus in this is like 1400 something, and they throw them out. They need them back. I mean, it's just because they're being controlled by, because this was the city states. This was Genoa.
Yeah.
This was Genoa.
Yeah.
And so in Genoa, and man, go and look at that. So it's just amazing. This is not new. None of this is new.
The Florence,
Time of the
Genoa,
Greeks,
Venice, they were
BC.
all seeing who could control the world's commerce, control the world.
Because it's about an oligarchy, and an oligarchy
And
that
with money.
What do you call it? Hegemony, where you control the area.
Yeah, and you do
But
they
they
do it
can-
with
they-
money. They control the money.
Oh,
This
yeah,
oligarchy
who owns a
is
gold
over
owns a road.
1,000 years old. When you
easy.
look at family
easy,
lines.
yeah.
Okay, here's
Generations.
an interesting
Easy.
little tidbit. After the Revolutionary War, we had some of our founding fathers wanted a central bank, but it was a central bank controlled by the government.
Well, you're talking about Hamilton.
Right. And some of them didn't because they didn't want any central bank at all. Just free market, whatever, And they both had, good reasons for what they believed, but the central bank that our founding fathers wanted was not one owned and controlled by private bankers. It was going to be owned and controlled by the federal government. And so shortly after the Revolution,
1776.
well, shortly afterwards, we did have a form of that federally controlled central bank, and they had to get their credit from European central banks because we had nothing. So the federal central bank was working on the credit of international central banks.
When did central banks?
It had a term limit, which was 20 years.
When did central banks that our founding fathers did not want? When did it get introduced into America? Was it pre-Civil War or after Civil War?
It was right after the Revolution, probably in the late 1700s sometime. I don't know exactly when, but it had an expiration date on it. The central bank, the first central bank controlled by the federal government, to even get that, they had to have a compromise and put an expiration date on it.
Okay. Well, let's close out this show. I want to continue our talk on this.
1797.
1797. So we'll pick up there with part 2 of the Federal Reserve. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Thank you for tuning into False Flag, the grassroots activism podcast where together we can change the world. Please like, comment, and subscribe.